So today is February 2nd, 2023, and just wanted to talk a little bit about what's going on. Um, this coffee was here on the bottom bunk, and we're making room for some coffee that's already recently come out of the mill, and it's sunning in the patios. So this coffee was moved up to here, and this is the second bunk on a three bunk bed. So we've got all of this prepped because all the other bottom bunks are occupied, so we're passing coffee up a little bit. So you can see, since these are day lots and they've been kind of selected, not kind of, they have been selected. They don't get mixed until the very end, when we're absolutely sure that everything can be mixed, or might not even mix them. You know, some of them we might just keep them separate if we find that we like them just the way they are. But usually what we do try to do is we separate these guys. These are camaguas. Camagua is a Spanish word for a coffee bean that is not fully ripe. So these get separated. Not that there's anything wrong with this coffee, it's just not as high quality as the ones that are fully ripe. I mean, if you drink this cup of coffee, it's way better than anything that you're going to find most anywhere, you know, unless you go to a specialty coffee place. So I like to drink this. This makes a good everyday coffee. Nothing wrong with that. It's just that these have been sorted for ripeness. So if you're really going for that extra special coffee, this is the one to get. And these are your good everyday coffees. Nothing wrong with them. But just wanted to show how we keep them separated. You know, it's labeled. It's got a date. You know, not a lot of these. These are Maragos. This area right here is Guachipiling, but the guys write it with an A. Aguachipiling. And that's a tree. There's a tree that's a Guachipiling tree in this field. Now these are the jumbo beans, Maragos. And they're kept separate. Everything here's separate. We don't really start to mix these until we run out of bunks. So when we start running out of bunks, these will mix. Just these camaguas, they'll get mixed, and they'll go into our everyday coffee. That's what we got here. These are Maragos. This is the really special stuff. And it's kept separate, and it's just drying slowly. No rush. No rush. We don't want to rush. And oh, here's a Peña Blanca one. That's a field that we have called Peña Blanca. Yep, right there. Not too. So February, not a lot of coffee in the dryer, because we don't really get much of the coffee until March. March is the peak. February we're going to start to harvest some more. But these are some early coffees. January. See, it was cut on it was harvested on January 26th, and it was completely processed by January 27th. Let's see what this one says. Right there, Piedra Tigo. That means Tigo rock. Tigo is, here in Guatemala, it's the cell phone company. So there's not a lot of cell phone reception here at the farm. So everybody goes to this rock that's got an avocado tree growing between a crack in the rock. And that avocado tree serves as shade. And Tigo is where you can kind of like stretch your arm out for a little bit and then you get a phone reception. So people call it Piedra Tigo, like Tigo rock, cell phone reception. We call it the phone booth, basically. So this is early, January 2nd, right after New Year's. And we'll process on January 3rd. So the guys get out there and just go cherry picking the different, on the bushes, just picking out a couple of the mature ones. They don't get it all at one go. This one has a different color altogether. You can see how everything's a little bit lightened up, clear. But this one's got a little bit of a yellowish tint to it. So this one was harvested January the 3rd. And we processed it 2 days later. So that extra day gave it this little yellow. Now this can work in your favor or against your favor. So you can see it's not a lot of coffee, it's just a little bit. So, I mean, I went out there and just kind of cherry picked some coffee beans. And you can see how that fruit attached to the parchment. Like, let me show you. That's the bean right there, and it still has a little bit of silver skin. Little silver skin in the bean, not much. That skin right there is called parchment. So the coffee fruit's on the outside, and then there's a layer of parchment, and then there's a layer of silver skin. All of this gets removed when it goes through the dry mill. Now some of this parchment falls off during wet milling or during moisture testing. Like you would take off some of the parchment when you want to do some moisture testing. So anyways, you can see what an extra day does if you harvest and you don't process immediately. Like you'll see that January 3rd it was harvested, and January 4th it was processed early in the morning. So it just kind of set overnight. But here it's set until the 5th, and you can see that extra fruit that attached to the bean, and it turned the parchment a little bit yellow. You got to be careful with this, because if you just let it sit there too long, you will ruin your coffee. It will come out a little fermented, like a little vinegar twang or little wine taste to it. But if you do it quickly and you spread it out and let the air hit it, should be fine. And this is why we don't mix, because this little bit of coffee can be probably that little extra time it's set before processing could make this coffee the most magnificent coffee in the world. And you can run the risk sometimes to overdo it, and it's not so magnificent anymore. So I don't see anything wrong with this one, but we don't mix until the very end. I like to call these light honeys when they come out like this. The whole process really is a light honey. We'll get into that in another video, but I get excited when I see a little bit of yellow on it, because you just don't know. You just don't know. It could be like amazing. But the standard usual color is this more of a clean parchment. You don't see any fruit really attached to it. Well guys, I got my silly farmer hat on, but nice talking to you guys. We'll check you guys out later in a little bit.